It is exactly 5:30 a.m. local time above the ink-black waters of the Norwegian Sea, roughly 236 miles northeast of the NATO defensive line. Four massive Russian Tu-95 milliseconds Bear-H strategic bombers are thundering through the pre-dawn darkness, their contra-rotating propellers screaming at a deafening 100 decibels like a swarm of angry mechanical wasps. These aluminum dinosaurs, loaded with Kh-101 cruise missiles capable of leveling a city block, believe they are the invisible hunters under the cover of night. But they are dead wrong, because sitting silently in their blind spot, two F-35A Lightning II Ghosts have already turned this Predator patrol into the most expensive training target in history. Most people look at a Tu-95 and see a terrifying nuclear bomber. But if you look at the thermal signature through an AN/AAQ-37 sensor right now, you don't see a threat. You see a giant glowing shoot here sign. If the Russian flight lead makes one wrong move with his radar settings in the next 14 seconds, he won't just trigger an intercept. He will trigger a humiliating chain reaction that wipes out $200 million rubles of Kremlin pride before the sun even rises. Stay focused, because the way a fifth-generation computer brain dissects a 1950s Soviet relic isn't just a fight, it is a cruel science experiment. To the naked eye, this formation looks like the apocalypse wrapped in aluminum. The Tu-95 milliseconds isn't just a plane. It is a flying earthquake driven by four NK-12 turboprops that churn out 15,000 horsepower each, creating a noise signature so distinct that U.S. submarines can hear it underwater. Flying shotgun are two Su-33 Flanker D fighters, the carrier-based heavyweights of the Russian Navy, armed to the teeth with R-27 Alamo missiles. Their N-1 Swordfish radars are sweeping the horizon like paranoid searchlights, frantically looking for anything that moves in the dark. On paper, this is an impenetrable fortress. The Kremlin calls them the Bear, a symbol of unbreakable Soviet might designed to fly 9,000 miles without refueling just to deliver a nuclear hello. They project an aura of absolute invincibility, a wall of sensors and steel built to smash through NATO defenses through sheer brute force. If you were a pilot in the 1980s, seeing this formation on your radar would be a definitive death sentence. But here is the lethal error that the Russian planners missed in their nostalgia. Being the biggest guy in the bar just makes you the easiest target to hit. Let's put a price tag on this flying circus, because in modern war, we don't just count bodies, we count dollars. Each of those refurbished Tu-95 bombers represents a $40 million legacy investment, stuffed with modern avionics that cost more than a standard Moscow hospital. Strapped under their wings are 8 Kh-101 stealth cruise missiles, each one a $13 million drain on the Russian economy, designed to terrorize civilians but currently just burning jet fuel over the ocean. Add in the two Su-33 Flanker escorts at roughly $55 million a pop, plus the scientifically irreplaceable cost of 4 senior flight crews with thousands of hours of experience. And you are looking at a floating asset bubble of nearly $500 million cruising at 30,000 feet. It is a staggering concentration of wealth in a country that can barely afford to pave its roads. To the Russian generals, this is a projection of power meant to terrify the West. But to the cold logic of a Western targeting computer, this isn't a military formation at all. It is a distressed asset waiting to be liquidated. Stay focused, because the market is about to crash, and the liquidation sale starts in exactly 3 minutes. At 5:35 a.m., while the Russian pilots are likely checking their fuel gauges and dreaming of vodka back in Murmansk, the two Norwegian F-35 has executed a maneuver that defines the difference between brute force and tactical genius. A rookie pilot might fly a head-on intercept straight at the enemy, like a jouster in a medieval tournament. But that is exactly what the Russians want. A head-on approach creates a closure rate of over 1,200 knots too fast for the human brain to process effectively, and puts the F-35 directly into the 120-degree search cone of the Su-33's nose. Radar. Instead, the NATO pilots perform a stern conversion, burning extra fuel to fly a wide, silent arc out over the dark water. It looks like they are running away, but in reality, they are circling the cage. By the time the clock hits 5:42 a.m., the trap snaps shut. The F-35 seconds slide seamlessly into the perch position high above and directly behind the Russian formation at the 6 o'clock angle. This is the geometry of death. The ancient N1 swordfish radars on the Russian flankers are mechanically scanning the empty sky in front of them, completely blind to the threat looming behind their exhaust plumes. It is a fatal flaw in the Soviet doctrine of forward hemisphere dominance. But here is the catch that makes this a masterclass in modern warfare: the mathematics of intercept. By approaching from the rear, the F-35 seconds reduce the closure speed to a comfortable 400 knots. This buys the pilots precious time, 5 luxurious minutes to sip water, check their systems, and analyze the Russian formation with the leisurely pace of a surgeon scrubbing in for an operation. The F-35 seconds don't even need to turn on their own radars. Their AAQ-37 distributed aperture system, a ring of 6 sapphire lens infrared cameras, is staring through the darkness, picking up the 400-degree heat of the Russian NK-12 engines. On the F-35's helmet-mounted display, the Russian formation is glowing like a Christmas tree in a dark room, while the Russians see absolutely nothing but empty, black sky. If you ask why the Russians haven't reacted yet, I'll tell you an unbelievable military secret. They are listening for radar waves that aren't there. The F-35 seconds are tracking them purely by heat, maintaining total radio silence, MCON. The Russian threat warning receivers are silent. Their pilots are relaxed. They have no idea that they are already being escorted by the Grim Reaper. Stay with me, because the F-35 pilot is about to flip a switch that will turn this silent stalk into a chaotic electronic nightmare. At 5:48 a.m., the lead F-35 pilot decides to wake the neighbors. With a flick of a thumb, he activates the AN/APG-81 AESA radar for exactly 2 seconds. Unlike the archaic Russian mechanical dishes that physically rotate like a slow ceiling fan, the AESA radar steers its beam electronically at the speed of light. It blasts the Russian formation with millions of focused radio waves, collects a perfect firing solution, and vanishes back into the void before the laws of physics allow a human to blink. Inside the Russian cockpits, the result is instant, heart-stopping chaos. The antiquated SPO-15 Berezovka warning systems technology that belongs in a museum next to the Commodore 64 suddenly light up like a disco floor in hell. The warning tone screams the specific frequency of a lock-on, the universal sound of impending death. The Russian pilots, who were likely halfway through a cigarette, jolt in panic. The formation shatters. The 2 Su-33 escorts bank violently to the left, their afterburners dumping raw fuel into the engine exhaust in a desperate attempt to gain speed. They activate their Gardenia jamming pods, blasting powerful electronic noise into the atmosphere to blind the enemy radar. But here is the twist that makes this so embarrassing. They are jamming absolutely nothing. The F-35 radar is already off. The Russians are screaming at a ghost. Their N1 radars are sweeping frantically, trying to find the source of the lock. But the F-35 has a radar cross-section of 0.005 square meters, roughly the size of a floating golf ball. The Russian sensors are looking for a barn door, and they can't find the needle. It is a scene of total tactical humiliation. $500 million of Russian hardware flailing around in the sky, fighting an enemy that they can't see, can't hear, and can't shoot. But wait, because the panic inside the Russian formation is about to force them to commit the ultimate sin of aerial warfare. At 5:51 a.m., seeing the Russian formation dissolve into a panic scatter, the F-35 pilots decide to turn the screw. They switch their radars to LPI, low probability of intercept mode. In this mode, the radar doesn't emit a steady scream. It whispers. It hops across thousands of frequencies per second, spreading its energy so thin that it blends in with the background static of the universe. To the archaic Soviet sensors on the Tu-95 seconds, this looks like ghost phantom signals appearing and disappearing from every direction at once. The Russian tactical computers, built with 1980s logic, conclude that they are not facing 2 jets, but an entire squadron swarming them from all sides. The panic in the Russian comms channel reaches a fever pitch. In a desperate bid to survive, the flight engineer on the lead bomber activates the defensive jamming suite at full power. And this is where the tragedy of Russian engineering reveals itself. The jammer is powerful, yes, but it is also indiscriminate. It blasts out such a massive wall of electronic noise that it effectively blinds its own escorts. The Su-33 pilot, his cockpit screaming with collision warnings and phantom radar locks, sees a massive signal spike right next to him. His adrenaline-soaked brain identifies it as an enemy jammer. He doesn't realize he is looking at his own boss. In a moment of electronic fratricide, the Su-33 instinctively slews its radar and achieves a hard lock on the lead Tu-95 bomber. For 43 terrifying seconds, a Russian fighter jet is seconds away from firing a live missile at a Russian nuclear bomber. It is a circular firing squad at 30,000 feet. The Russian formation is effectively fighting itself, consuming its own attention and resources in a chaotic brawl against a phantom. While the Russians are busy engaging in this electronic civil war, the F-35 seconds are doing something far more damaging than firing a missile. The AN/ASQ-239 Barracuda system is running silently in the background, acting like a digital vacuum cleaner. It is recording every frantic frequency hop, every jamming code, and every radar signature the Russians are emitting. This is the intel harvest. The Russians are broadcasting their most sensitive wartime frequencies in the clear, and the F-35 is building a library of their secrets that will be shared with every NATO ally and eventually Ukrainian defenders by lunchtime. Stay focused, because the pilots are about to end this game with a visual reveal that will be etched into the Russian aviators' nightmares forever. At 5:54 a.m., the F-35 flight lead decides the game has gone on long enough. He pushes the throttle slightly, breaking the invisible barrier of stealth to slide into the visual spectrum. This is the merge. Suddenly, just 500 meters off the left wing of the lead Tu-95, a dark gray shape materializes out of the morning mist like a predator surfacing from the deep ocean. The Russian pilot, likely exhausted from fighting his own jamming signals, looks out the frost-covered canopy and freezes. He isn't looking at a plane, he is looking at science fiction. While his Tu-95 is vibrating, violently shaking like a washing machine full of bricks as it fights the air resistance, the F-35A is gliding beside him with an eerie, supernatural smoothness. Its composite skin is seamless, devoid of the rivets and welding scars that cover the Russian bomber. It looks less like a machine and more like a tear in the fabric of reality. But here is the detail that makes the Russian pilot swallow hard. The F-35 pilot tilts his wings slightly, revealing the weapon base. It is a silent gesture, a universal sign language that says, "I could have ended you 40 minutes ago." Even at this point-blank range, the Russian radar screens are still confused, flickering between a solid lock and empty space. It is the ultimate physics flex to be so technologically advanced that you can stand right in front of your enemy and still be invisible to his machines. To add the final layer of salt to the wound, the radio crackles. The F-35 seconds aren't alone. From the cloud layer above, 2 Danish F-16 seconds and a British Typhoon drop down to join the party. The sky is suddenly crowded with NATO hardware. The Russian formation, once a proud symbol of intimidation, now looks like a group of caught shoplifters being escorted to the police station. They are bracketed, outgunned, and outclassed. The bear has been declawed, muzzled, and put on a leash. The message is brutal in its simplicity. You are not the hunters. You are the prey. As the Russian bears touch down in Murmansk, a military audit reveals this mission wasn't a patrol, it was strategic bankruptcy. Let's look at the final receipt because the return on investment (ROI) is brutal for the Kremlin. Russia burned roughly $300,000 in fuel and maintenance to fly 4 giant targets in circles. Their goal was intimidation. The result was humiliation. They proved their invincible nuclear fleet is just a slow, blind relic that gets toyed with by pilots drinking coffee 30 miles away. On the flip side, NATO's profit is astronomical. Remember that F-35 Barracuda system? In those 43 seconds of Russian panic, the Kremlin inadvertently broadcasted their specific jamming waveforms and reaction times. If the Pentagon hired a spy to steal this data, it would cost billions. Today, Russia just Amazon primed their deepest military secrets to NATO servers for free. This proves the theorem of 21st century warfare. Russia brings muscles to a math fight. In a real war, there would be no polite escort. The entire Russian formation would have simply vaporized at 5:42 a.m., destroyed by invisible missiles before they even knew they were in a fight. The bear isn't a predator, it's a flying rug. So, I ask you, if you had $100 million, would you buy the loud, scary monster or the invisible algorithm that turns it into scrap metal? Let me know in the comments if the age of the dogfight is dead.